morning, everyone. My name is Hyung and I'm a founder and I'm CEO of Aware. We are a non-profit organization. We focus on improving animal welfare policies. And actually, our main task is conducting research as an evidence for better policy making. And that we, even though we are talking about wild animals, and then actually we cover from farm animals and companion animals, animals used in research, and like usually joke around that we do from rat to monkey. Today, this presentation is about the wildlife trade in South Korea. I've been working on improving our policies since 2009. So today I'm gonna give you a little some brief information about like some research that I conducted recently, and then also talk about some outcomes legally. Okay, before I start, if there's anyone who has had reptiles, like small like baby turtles, like don't take this presentation personally, okay? Yeah, I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. Anyways, the trade of wildlife significantly is one of the most major threat to decline of biodiversity. As I'm sure that many of you already know, that by overexploiting the wild population, introducing the invasive species, and spreading disease, think about the insect and fungus. And in addition to that, actually, the wildlife overexploitation can lead to long-term ecology the issues, such as imbalance in sex ratio and reduced reproduction rates in vulnerable species. And then also, of course, it makes some negative impact on animal welfare. And in South Korea, with the lack of regulation and growing population of popularity of animals, and so concerns about the breeding, trading, and keeping exotic pets in South Korea have been increasing. And also the proliferation of uncontrolled commercial facilities that keeping wild animals are also threats to animal welfare and biodiversity. So I think I am the only animal welfare person in the room, right? So I just want to give a brief explanation about what animal welfare is. Actually, there are many definitions of animal welfare, but usually it's the state of animal when it's coping with the environment and how it feels. So like many people think that actually it's like what the animals have, like what kind of resource that they have, but actually even though we are all in the same room, and then every individual is feeling differently, right? That's actually what animal welfare is. So the 5-domain model, has anyone ever heard about the 5-domain model? Okay, so that's the most widely adopted component when we are assessing animal welfare. So the nutrition, if they are provided proper nutrition, or whether they're in a proper environment, or they're healthy, or they have opportunity to express natural behavior, and then as a result, it's about like how are their mental states. So being said that, animals in wildlife trade suffer at all stages from capturing, transport, and keeping. And some argue that actually the animals in trade are captive bred, but actually it involves wild capture animals as well. And then during the capturing, they are exposed to temperature and environmental changes, contact with unwanted contact with human and other animals, and other factors that can lead to starvation, dehydration, and hyperthermia or hypothermia, suffocation, etc. Also, for the captive bred animals, and actually intensified the production method lead to severe spatial limitation, lack of enrichment, and behavior predation. And then even when they're at home, it's extremely difficult to actually provide the environment and actually the components that actually fulfill animals' needs, like physiologically and behaviorally. So the research, one research showed that actually in UK, and when the reptile arrives in home environment, actually 75% of them die in their first year. Regarding species and conservation ecology, of course, over harvesting in the wild can lead to the decline of population, right? But another thing is actually the regulation varies different countries. So it's actually like really hard to actually legally manage the global trade. For instance, actually the green tree python, which is a very popular species as a pet. Actually, 80% of the species, 80% of the individuals in market are actually wild captured, not captive bred. And another thing is actually once the new species is found in the wild, and then before proper legal protection are put in place, they are already captured in market. And then, of course, we have CITES, so currently less than 10% of reptile species are either CITES or Appendix 1 or 2. And risk of introducing invasive alien species. Because in Korea, there's 38 legally designated introduced invasive species, and actually all reptile species were imported as pets. And for instance, we have red-eared spider. It's designated invasive species in Australia too, right? And they were introduced in 1980 as a pet, and then people just started releasing them to the wild. So it's the government designated as IES, right? And then the problem is once you ban one species, people want species that are similar. Still after that, and then the people imported river cougar, and then now it's invasive species as well. So that's why actually we need to change in our legal system. Now, sorry about the graphic image. Actually, this photo, I received it from former employee of a raccoon cafe. Actually, he was bitten by the raccoon that he was actually taking care of. Then imagine if it was visitor or children. But this happens on regular basis. And of course, around 75% of the emerging human diseases are noted. And the quarantine, we have a quarantine system. We all do have a quarantine system, right? But actually, quarantine system is not just sufficient to prevent these issues. Because the quarantine happens in certain location, and then they quarantine certain species, and then actually the lack of the post-monitoring is another problem. And then some argue that, the animals in trade, they are not wild animals. They're captive bred. They're in home. They're because they can survive in the wild environment. But the thing is, actually taming and domestication is two different concepts. Actually, taming involves conditioning the individual animal, but actually the domestication results in permanent genetic modification. So even though you have wild animals, you bred the wild animals for after generation, and then it will never be domesticated animals. And of course, some species are poisonous or predatory. And then another thing is that we don't know much about wild species, unlike domesticated species. When they're sick, and then what kind of treatment that they should have. So it's a lack of information. It's actually another threat to public health. So our research object was first, we wanted to figure out the size, like how many exotic pets do we have? What kind of species do we have in our community? to actually have the evidence before defining, before implementing effective policy. And second, what are the levels of animal welfare of the kept animals? And then in terms of regulation, one needs to be done, one needs to be improved. First, we conducted a survey of 3,000 people. Actually, we're doing this every year. Actually, cost fortune, that's what it was for. To estimate the population of exotic pet owners. So, 20 questionnaire, including sex, age, region, species of pet, number of pets, and then the method of how they acquire their pets, and the intention of having exotic pets in the future, etc. And then also level of agreement on like how strongly they agree on strengthening our policy. So study areas are all 7 provinces in South Korea, from age 15 to 69, and our sample size was 3,000. So our finding showed that 36.7% of respondents have pets. And if you look at it, then this doesn't seem outrageous, right? So 3.3% at reptiles, avians 1.7%, and other mammals, other wild species mammals 0.7%. And then in terms of number of animals, estimated population of pets was mammals was 0.47, avian 0.64, reptile 1.2, and amphibian 0.23. And it was interesting that actually the respondents under age 18 had a higher rate in having reptile and avians than average. Because of this sample size was just too small, and then it was hard to identify exactly which species they have. So we conducted a separate survey of almost 2,000 exotic pet owners to analyze the species and the perception of animal welfare. So the survey was distributed via exotic pet trade shows and online community and associates with breeder and also veterinary clinics. Actually, it was really hard to secure this sample size of owners. So we asked about 34 questions about include the respondent characteristics and how they acquire their animals and how aware they acquire the animals and if they had an agreement with all family members and why they want to keep exotic pets and what's the motivation of the first acquiring. And also keeping and husbandry, like how do they take care of their animals, and if they had experience of animal escaping, and what happened to the animals that escaped, and how they provide their veterinary care, and also breeding and trade, if they have experience of breeding, and then what they do with the newborns, and etc. So according to our owner survey, that lists 373 species are kept as pet in South Korea. So 23 mammals and 30 avians, mostly it's reptile and amphibians. 245 reptiles and then 75 amphibians. And among those species, actually 126 species were listed on CITES. And the number of individuals was 542 mammals and 572 avians, and majority of them actually was reptiles, and compared to reptiles, and then we have less than amphibian species. And also species that pose risk to Korean native environment when they or escape or they're released to the wild, and then there's possibility that these can be adapted to our native environment, such as raccoons and mongoose, fox, and prairie dogs. And then also species that pose risk to public health, such as spotted cayenne or African civet and the fruit bat were also identified. So they're actually keeping these animals at home, and then we don't know like what kind of quarantine process that they went through. So this is just the mammalian species, list of mammalian species that we have. So this is the estimated number of exotic pet owners and individuals that we calculated. So if we use the public survey of 3,000 and as a standard basis, it comes out that we have about 2.4 million animals. But if we use owner survey, because the average number of animals per person is much higher in owner survey. So if the reptile alone, if the number comes up to 4.4 million. Actually, the 4.4 million is when we excluded the respondent that we thought that they were commercial breeder. Because if one person has more than 15 individuals, like this, like one species, more than 15 individuals, or like 100 individuals, and then we actually didn't think that they were just laymen, they were probably a commercial breeder. But if we add the commercial breeder, then the number comes up to 8.7 million. So that's actually a lot of exotic pets that we have. And then these are some key findings about the survey, and then actually the most exotic pet owners, their motivation was either YouTube or the social network, and 43% of them actually started keeping them pretty recently, and actually this is interesting to see more than 60% of them never actually taken their animals to the veterinary care, so we don't know what their medical condition is. So once they're introduced to our the wild, and then we have actually a possibility for spreading of transmitted disease. And almost 20% of respondents said they had their animal escaped, and 13% said they never found the animals. And then also the 7.1 respondents reported that they had injuries from the animals that needed medical attention. And then we also did an assessment on the unregulated facility. So as of 2023, we had 250 unregistered and uncontrolled animal exhibitions, such as wild animal cafe and intended bee park and farms, or many of other commercial facilities or wild fields. And then they were keeping almost 300 species. So these are some the welfare issues that they have. Of course, and even because most of the facilities are operated indoor, so there's not much that you can do, even though you want to provide something for their biological needs. And then because of the inadequate care, and then there are many animals that were actually sick, and then also they were exposed to the kids, which actually threatens our public health. And then also increased demand, social demand for exotic pets. And then this is just what we do yearly on the public survey to prove that there's a strong demand for stronger legislation. So here we have some outcomes. So I'm sure that a lot, unlike probably most of you guys, the research itself is already great with the academic value, but what we do is actually we conduct research to provide actual evidence to government or to parliament or any policymakers. So all collected data was provided to the government and parliament, and we using this data, and then we organize parliamentary events such as forum debates just to put this issue on the political agenda. And then we initiated the bill on, we provided the bill draft consultation, and then as a result, in past 4 or 5 years, actually 37 bills were introduced in the parliament. So what we suggested was positive list. I'm not sure if there is anyone who is familiar with this system. So in controlling wildlife, like negative list, designate species that cannot be imported. They actually restrict or ban species. But unlike with the issues with the negative list, it's really hard to enforce because it has to be proved by the government that animal has negative impact. So it has to have some negative impact, so it's actually reactive rather than preventative. But on the other, positive list regulates animals that one person can keep. So list is actually very short, and then it's based on established criteria. So for instance, in Netherlands, they assess their impact on human health and then whether the people can provide their food in home environment or the spatial needs on thermal regulation and social behavior. So they're more evidence-based approach, and then it's also the best thing is it's precautionary. So it's actually there are not that many countries that are implementing positive list. Australia, that I think you guys have as a combination of both positive and negative, and then actually differentiate between the states. And in Europe, and Netherlands is Netherlands, Belgium, and Luxembourg are one of the some of the countries that already have positive lists. And in France and Norway, they're actually discussing implementing the positive list. And this is actually the best part. And then after years of effort, in 2021, an amendment bill on the Wildlife Protection Act and also Act of Management of Zoos and Aquariums was introduced in 2021 and passed the parliament in 2002. And actually, host of this event, Dr. Kim played an instrumental role in this movement. So if you see him somewhere, just give him some pat on the shoulder or traditional bow to show your appreciation. One of the main changes, we are implementing a positive list system, so which prescribes a list of species that can be imported or privately owned. And then also we are prohibiting the exhibiting any wildlife species unless you are licensed in zoo. And then we have we have many clauses that I should say that are designed to enhance the welfare of wild animals. So this is actually the provision that that's newly implemented. So no one may import designated and manage wildlife except for the species prescribed by the Ministry of Environment. So that's gonna be the list of the positive list. And then also, if you want to import or sell the species that are on the list, then you will need a license from the government. So we still have some remaining challenges, but I wanted to tell you that the research has a clear path to making social impact, and I'm sure as scientists and ecologists, you will have the opportunity to sit down with a stakeholder and talk about the controlling wildlife trade. And then please remember that it's not only animals that suffer. Actually, it's causing the issues on biodiversity, or it's about human health, or it's about economy. And we are in the process of creation of the species, actually the assessment tool to test the species, and we get strong opposition by the trader and the hobby breeder. So I am just hoping that you can have some outcomes that I wish for. And then during the negotiation, and then of course, as always, some provisions have to be considered. So we just need to keep doing what we are doing, and then just go for the stronger policies. And simply improving standard is just not enough. Just law is just piece of paper without proper enforcement. So the enforcement must be in place. And of course, after law comes in effect, more research should be conducted to see if it's actually getting the results that we hope for. So we are just doing what we're doing, and hopefully, and then I can report you with the great news that here. I think this is actually the possibility in Korea is actually working. All right. That's what I have for today, and thanks for listening.
Okay, thank you very much. So we are summing up the morning session now. We will have a 30-minute coffee break, and we'll come back at 11 o'clock to have the second session. Like I said, today is supposed to go to the island, but because of strong wind, we changed it. So after the tea break, we'll continue with the presenters, but the organizer shows who's going to do what. So you have to find your name. I'll just say the ID from the CNU, you do that. And the second one, Yang Jerry from China, you will have the next one. And then the Kawat Chana, right? From the Palestinian Thailand, okay? And then final is Mr. Cooper from the James University. So four students will have the second part of the morning session, the lunch. So be prepared, have a nice coffee break, come back after that. Thank you. 이제 거의